Well, hey, audience, welcome. And once again, we're here with another warrior for Way of the Warrior. My name is Trevor Martin, and I'm the founder of RMF Coaching. And I've previously stated on other episodes, I go out, right, on social media looking for warriors, looking for those individuals that have a passion for promoting goodness out into this dark world. And usually the messages that they're getting out there are full of passion, full of energy, and full of excitement. And I just so happen to have found another one, Meghan McGilvra. And Megan, I gotta tell you, like, I'm all smiles here because I know the message that you deliver and I know how you do it. So I gotta tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's
No,
exciting.
no problem. And it is. And and that's what this is about, right? It's about that excitement. It's about delivering that message with the passion that we do. It's about connecting with the audience because we know we know that there's people out there, and we were just talking about this right before I hit record. We know that there's people out there that need to hear the message. They need to know that they are supported. So
Yep.
I got to ask, right? We go back and we talked about, some of the things that we faced. When you take us back, right? Take us on a little bit of a journey. When you first started this, or actually just thought about like, hey, I want to help out people. Where did that thought come from? Take us back a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a total Air Force brat, right? And
Okay.
so that means that in family you serve and you're loyal and you're committed to everyone around you. But it also means that you move every 2 or 3 years and you have to figure out how to form new relationships and forget your friends and find new ones.
Man.
Facebook wasn't around, so it's not like you're
Right.
keeping track unless you're writing letters, right?
Right.
And so, between that moving and the service piece, it was really obvious to me that I had to do something that impacted other people, and really created more opportunity for
Yeah.
other people, right? I think that there were people that opened doors for me, and that was huge. And I wanted to make sure that I could open those doors for other people. So, I got into college and I think I was going to be a psychologist. That was the big thing. And then realized that
Really.
I sucked at math, like totally sucked at math. And you needed that, I guess, to be a psychologist. And so I went into social work. And since then, right, I've gone from counseling people individually, from working with nonprofits to really working more on systems,
Okay.
because it doesn't matter how much we help individuals if they're going into systems that still aren't working for them, right?
Preach.
And so that became more of my work of I could do this all day, but if I'm not fixing the system they're going into, it's never going to work, right? They're
Yeah.
never going to succeed. And so that's what's really led me to the work that I'm doing right now. And LinkedIn, has been a blast for me in the last couple of years. I started doing that because I realized that there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that still don't have the understanding of where talent actually comes from, right? They use it to go find jobs and they use it to network and things like that, but there's not a lot of voices out there that say, hey, talent, is equally distributed, opportunities are not. And so we have to have more people believing that talent comes from all places. And so LinkedIn's become that platform for me lately, and it's been fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like, and you can see that in the message and in the content that you deliver. You said that oh man, I just messed it up. The talent is equally distributed, but opportunities are not. Did I get
Mm-hmm.
that right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
like what talk to me a little bit more about that because that resonates with me. Like where do you, I mean, how that's an impactful statement. It really,
Yeah,
really
and it's not mine, Trevor. It's not mine.
well,
It
I
comes
mean, but it's
from, yeah, yeah. It comes from our founder, Gerald, from the company I work for right now called Year Up. And he realized that because oftentimes the belief of talent is what your skin color is, how much money you have, what educational system you have, right?
yeah,
And if we think that talent is equally distributed, then we have to change what we think talent looks like,
yeah.
right? And so you are born as whole, you are born with talent, you are born with skills and assets, and you can continue to develop those. But no matter how great you develop them, if there's not an opportunity, if there's not somebody opening that door for you, it's only so far you can go. And so oftentimes it's the color of your skin, it's the amount of income you have in your bank account that actually changes what opportunity you have, until you have people that can open those doors, right? And can create that access and that opportunity because they have the talent to walk through it. right? Most people
Yeah.
have that in them, but so often the systems are stopping people from being able to be successful in that, right?
Right. And so the idea is to not the idea, right? Instead of putting a band-aid over a bullet hole, right? The idea is to go in and help change those systems, right? Help
Right.
those systems operate more, not, I mean, I would say more effectively, but paying attention to the actual root cause, the actual problem itself.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, there's, I've been a social worker for years in lots of different areas and mostly always in youth work. And it's a really sad thing when we're just focused on basic needs. It needs to happen, right? People need to eat, they need to have shelter. Those are important things that have to happen. But if you solve all that and they still don't have access to their own economic mobility, they can't make their own money, they can't fund their own homes, things like that. If those systems still aren't working, what are you doing? You know what I mean? You're
Right.
just band-aiding.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to be able to figure out like where's that root cause, and how do we start adjusting that root cause and ultimately allowing people to be autonomous, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't want to fix everything for everyone and then continue to fix it, right? We want people to be able to feel empowered enough to fix it with us and for it to stay fixed, right?
Yeah.
So that they can create their own income and their own autonomy and their own confidence in what they can do.
Right on.
Yeah.
So how, I mean, people, humans as a whole are resistant to change, right? They're
Right.
also resistant to going, oh, I'm part of the problem, or like,
Right.
like actually
Right.
saying that, oh, there is an actual problem with the system, right? There's so many people don't even want to tackle that. Like, that's a
Mhm.
mountain I don't want to die on. So we're just gonna,
Right.
it is it is
Right.
what it is, and we'll just check the necessary boxes that we have to check, and we'll just keep on going with the status
Mhm.
quo. So
Yep.
I appreciate the fact that you are not willing to do that, that you are like, no, 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 no. I'm telling you right now, there is a flaw with the system. We need to do something. We need to implement change.
Yep.
How much so as a warrior for change, right? As a change advocate, or change agent, how
Mhm.
how much resistance do you meet?
A ton. A
Yeah.
ton.
Oh,
A ton.
talk to me about this.
Yeah.
'Cause
A ton.
I love that whole getting through adversity.
Yeah, because people, to your point, people don't want to change, and you're
Right?
messing with beliefs that are consistently validated in everything that they do,
Okay.
right? And so they're not looking for the validation on the other side because they see validation that the system is working for them, right? And people don't like rocking the boat when it's working fine for them. So noticing that it's not working fine for everyone else is not part of the ego that's going to go, oh, well, it's fine for me. I'm fine. Right. But the world is not a pie. You know what I mean? It's not like you
Yeah.
get more and you get less, right? It's everyone can have a piece of the pie, right? That's possible without you losing some of yours. And so, we get a lot of challenges around people's privilege ultimately, right? That they don't want to lose parts of their privilege or what they think they would lose as parts of their privilege, if they give it to others, right? And so we have
Yeah.
to kind of push back on, hey, the beliefs are what actually need to change, right? Our programs can be amazing and the different models I work with across the country are great. But if people's beliefs don't change, then systems don't change. Right.
So
And so,
yeah.
yeah,
So how do you, and I'm sorry if I just cut you off there.
no, go.
Okay. So when you're talking about beliefs now, I mean, that's some heavy shit. Like, that's trying to
Hmm.
get somebody to change their belief, to change their mindset, especially when the narrative has been the same for so long. How do you go about that? Like, how do you navigate that? Or how
Yeah,
do you
you've got
start?
to, right. You've got to, people need to experience something that challenges their original beliefs in order to change it. Right. So
All
you need the
right.
data, right? You
Yeah.
need to start seeing data. You need to have the individual experience. And I think it's in so many biases in the world where we're like, oh, we think this about this group, or we think this
Great.
about that group, or women shouldn't do this, or men should do that, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Pick your bias. But then you make a friend with somebody that is a woman and find out they're amazing in tech, right? So like we've got to put experiences in front of people that force them to check what that bias and that is what's being validated in that, right? And make sure that something else is being validated. And so most of the work that we do is really setting up experiences for people to see talent that they didn't recognize that way. A young Black man, right, from areas that potentially don't have a lot of income, work with that person, see the talent, experience the talent, and your beliefs start to change, that it doesn't need to be a Harvard graduate I hire every single time, right? It can be
Right on.
a young Black man from a low income area because the talent is equal, right? And so you've got to force the other side for people to challenge themselves, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of consistency. But eventually, I think people, they want to believe that, right? And
Oh,
so they'll change.
absolutely. I like, you know what?
Yeah.
I I I applaud the words. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of consistency, right?
Hmm.
That consistently wanting to battle on the side to help implement that change, to help move the needle right forward, to get
Right.
to help with what I would call, even in today's day, day and age, like progressive thinking. Because for
Hmm.
so long we've been, like we talked about,
Yeah.
that narrative has been like this. You said in this, excuse me, I got the hiccups. This stuck with me. You said choose your bias, pick your
Hmm.
bias, right? And I'm thinking, and I'm not gonna lie, like I literally, as you're talking, I went back in my head and I went, pick your bias. I'm like, I'm not biased against anybody, am I? And then I started to think,
Always.
wait
Everyone
a
is.
minute, yeah, I am. Like, holy cow, like, and
Everyone is.
as you continue to talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, right?
Right.
Like there's so many narratives in my own head that I need to change. And I'm just
Right.
thinking as you go. So to your point, the more like platforms like this, right? The more you can get your message out and say, hey, listen, the
Yep.
way you are thinking right now, and you consider it to be normal and correct, is not.
It's not.
We need to do something about that. So I applaud, like, the consistency and the work that you do, or sorry, the work that you do and the consistency of which you do it. Like, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it started really around centering around youth, right? I'd worked with so many young people in one-on-one counseling sessions and things like that to help young people adjust their way of thinking.
Mm,
And that was my first bias check, I think, as a social worker, was going, what people assume about young people is crazy, right? The narrative that's told about young people is insane. It's rarely uplifting, right? The second you say teenager, your
right.
head is filled with like the one that did graffiti, the one that does this, they're naughty, they cuss all right. There's just right away that happens in your head the
I
second
think
you say teenager.
chemical romance,
Right.
teenagers scare the shit out of me, their song.
Yes,
Like every time.
yes.
Okay, good. I'm right
Right,
with
the Dirtbag Teenager song, right? I was jamming to that
yeah.
the other day in my car. Yeah, it's one of my faves. And you just assume it. And
Yeah.
so it can be a funny stereotype, right? And we can joke around, but ultimately that changes how you interact with that young person,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You don't expect greatness from a teenager because you're expecting them to misbehave, be rebellious, and be naughty. And that's just not the truth, but we sure as all hell can find validation on our bias on that one, right? And so that's really where it started with me, is like, okay, young people have so much passion, right? And if you think about like how quickly a young person falls in love and then they break up and it's like the end of the world, right? The
Right.
world is ending, right? We all had
Right.
that crush
Right.
at 16 that was like, that was the man I was going to marry and my life is over because we broke up.
Yep.
If you take that kind of passion, that intensity of emotion that a young person feels, and it's directed in good, it's directed in them skill building, it's directed in them exploring themselves. If you can reroute that, young people can make a hell of a lot more change than any old person, because we just don't have that passion anymore, right? We don't feel that intensely about things as you do at the age between that like 15 and 18-year-old. That's an intense emotional stage for a young person. And if you can reroute that, big things happen. And so the second I started checking that bias, right, it was like, okay, great. And now we can keep moving through of, oh, the world, the system is not set up for people of color, right? Other biases become okay to start to challenge
Yeah.
if you start with one that's familiar to you, right? That's more knowledgeable to you.
Well said. Well, and because then you eventually, like, okay, if I can wrap my head around this change that's more normal, or I'm more relatable,
Right.
then I'm going to be more accepting, in the future, to something that's a little like, well, wait, I really haven't
Um,
thought about that, but because
yeah.
this makes sense,
Hmm.
that's starting to make sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we want to think we're good people, right? We
Y-
want to be good people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that statement. We want to think that we want to think we want to be good. We want to think that we're good people. Just sidebar here. I talk about when I do some leadership coaching. I talk about you always want to leave people with when you're having a conversation, no matter even if it's a difficult conversation. You always want to leave people with two things. Number one, respect. Number two, hope. Right? You
Yep.
want to feel that the other person is respected no matter what. But number two, to your point, like we want good. We want that hope, right? We want hope for a better future, for a brighter future. Hope that the day is going to be amazing. So take me back to one of the things that I wanted to come back to was you said Navy brat, right? Did I get that right? Navy.
Air Force, Air
Sorry, Air
Force.
Force. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go in there and edit it out. But
Hmm.
sorry, Air Force, uh, Air Force brat. But you talked about um moving and leaving, like leaving your friends. What kind of
Yep.
impact did that have on you?
I've thought more and more about it lately, to be honest, because my kids, I have two daughters, right? And they have such consistency in their life, and how they are growing up is so different, right? And I had consistency and love, and I had a very good upbringing. I had lovely parents and a good family around me. But a lot of that was because we had to kind of nest together because the
Right.
only consistency was us, right?
Yeah.
The rest of our family was somewhere else. And so, you're kind of forced to build that bond in a different way. But I think, the biggest thing it's helped me with is I can talk to anyone, right? I can form relationships really easily, very quickly with people because
Yeah.
I had to survive, to get what I needed as a child, to have friends and love and care, right? I had to do that. And so that's really impacted my career and my relationships. I will say the negative part of it is I'm also really used to walking away from relationships, right?
Okay.
So the first time
Yeah.
that when my dad retired and we had to stay in a place longer than 3 years, I didn't know what to do with friends after 3 years, because I was used to like getting up and going, right? So consistent, long relationships where things start to get difficult and you have to have challenging conversations and it takes a lot of effort to maintain relationships has
Yeah.
always been hard for me, right? It's always been because of that, because I was just used to walking away, right? I didn't have to. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I didn't even, I guess when I asked the question, I wasn't prepared for that the timed response. Like, so all right, well, I hit the 3 year mark. Deuces. Like, I mean,
Right.
like, oh, well, we're not leaving.
Right.
But so now
Dang it.
how do I wait? Do I still talk to them? Are we, I mean,
Right.
like,
Right.
do I continue to build upon this? Because aren't we going at some point in time and just waiting for the other shoe to drop? Like,
Uh-huh.
what's going on? Huh?
Uh-huh.
How
Yeah.
did how did that play into your into I'm gonna guess it was the same thing with dating. Like, hey, listen, this ain't gonna be a long-term thing because
Right.
out and I don't do long
Right.
distance.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think, it's funny when most of my relationships, after high school were all really long relationships, because I wanted to prove that wrong. I wanted the consistency. And I
Ah,
think that's because of the nesting that we did with my parents,
makes
right? That
sense.
central core. So like I wanted to build my central core. And so whenever I was dating anyone, it was always really long-term relationships. And those spaces, I want it long-term, but I also am still challenged with like having the courage to have courageous conversations with your significant other, right? Like
Ah,
that's still a challenge for me. And I think the only reason I'm good at it with my husband now is because I'm a social worker, right?
yeah.
Because I took years and years of learning how to counsel people. And in that process, I've been able to kind of counsel myself to say, like, okay, this is okay. We can have a challenging conversation. The world won't end, right? We can get mad at each other and we're not getting divorced tomorrow,
Right.
right? That's okay. Right.
That's
But that's still in my head often.
so let me I'm gonna put you on the spot here
Sure.
because of your social worker and you were just talking about a difficult conversation with with your significant other or if there's fighting. So let me ask you this. If so I have a problem with anger. Okay? And
Hmm.
this is true. I'm opening up here which is um a little hard, but so I have an issue with with internal anger.
Hmm.
At times, and I'm not talking to be clear for everyone here and the audience. I'm not talking about being emotionally abusive or physically abusive to anybody because of the anger. I'm just saying that somewhere in here, is a ball of rage that I can, no matter what, and there's people that will watch this that have worked with me, that have tried to work with me on me, right? About that. When you like, I can't, it so far, and maybe it
Mhm.
has to do with letting things from the past go. I don't know. But so far, I have not been able to let that go. Like,
Yeah.
I,
Well, and you functioned with it for so many years, right? So like you've got to give yourself credit on that too, right? We don't just like change things out of nowhere. You know, if
okay,
it has worked for you as a survival skill for some way, for some reason, for a very long time.
correct.
And so it's going to take years of consistent work. It took you 30
Right.
years to learn this. It might take you 30 years to unlearn it,
Okay.
right? And that's just the truth, right? So having that grace with yourself is such a huge part. Anger is an interesting one for me because the big light bulb moment for me when I was learning about doing counseling work was anger's not really an emotion, right? It's not. And for so long, I was like, well, you're sad, you're happy, you're angry. Angry is not actually an emotion. It's a response to an emotion. So the emotion is fear. The emotion is being scared. The emotion is being disappointed, right? The emotion is being
Okay.
sad. And as a survival skill, we turn that into anger because that feels a hell of a lot better than having to admit that I'm scared or sad right now. And especially for men, right? That's a much more common in men. I'm not going to sit here and cry that, my dad's mad at me or my mom's mad at me or this happened and I'm disappointed. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn that into anger. And so my automatic response when something happens that's similar to it or something happens that I can't control will be anger. But I'm really afraid that person's going to leave me or I'm really scared that I'm not lovable, right? That's really what it is.
You don't know how
We
close to
we don't
home
want to feel that.
with that last statement, lovable. Like, you don't know,
Yeah.
like, that's how close to home you just hit. I appreciate, I don't know. I I'm glad I asked the question. Number two, I really appreciate the anger is not an emotion. Like, I'm going to be writing about that, I think, later on today,
Yeah.
just to
Good.
just to put all my thoughts down. So
Yeah.
so thank you for that, because I know that was a kind
Yeah.
of little off the beaten path here. I respect that. I respect you for that statement, and I thank you for taking the time to answer that.
Yeah.
Really, especially
Yeah.
since it was like, hey, surprise, I'm going to ask this.
No, I love that stuff. And we talk about it a lot in my house, right? My husband has a ball of anger in him as well, too, that he constantly is working on. And shoot, he's married to a social worker, that poor guy, right? So like I'm constantly like, do you really mean that? Right? Like we're having therapy sessions in the house
Like,
all the time.
I'm sorry
Right.
you were saying, yeah,
Exactly. But his immediate response, his automatic response to things, not externally, but internally, is anger or disappointment, right? And it takes a lot of work to break that down. I mean, it's brave that you're even thinking about wanting to address that and that you've done work to do it, right? That's a really brave thing to do because the scary part of that is once that is gone, then what? Once the anger response is gone, that's really scary, right? Because you don't have one that's not tears and sad and crying, and that's not how you're taught to react.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, because
Yep.
I've literally wrote that down. Like, what then? Like,
What then?
so what? So you get
Yep.
that, you get through all of that. Now what's there?
Right. You've
Like,
got to have the tools there, right? That's what takes that long, that next 30 years to unlearn stuff or the next 10 years to unlearn stuff, right? Is
okay.
you've got to find the tools to replace that for you, or you'll just go back to it, or you'll fill it with a bottle or a drug or whatever, right? Anything to not feel.
Yeah,
And you've got to be comfortable feeling, and that's easier said than done for everyone, I think.
preach. No, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you're
Yeah.
spot on. Okay, so as you personally, as you look to the future, like the next year, the next 3 to 5, like, what for Megan, like, what's the plan? Like, what are you going to be doing? How are you going to be continuing to help people? Like, what are some of your goals? Like, what's going to go on with you?
That's a good question, Trevor. I don't know. Um, I think one, I'll keep doing the work I do. I don't know how and in what way, right? To be honest with you, but equity for everyone will always be a priority to me. How
Okay.
that's delivered could change, right? Right now I'm in workforce and that's awesome and I love it and I'm passionate about it. But equity could be in housing, right? Equity could be in environmental health and services. I mean, who knows?
Okay.
But it will always be centered around some sort of equity space. And I think it's funny about being on LinkedIn right now is that the people that I've met are so random all over the place.
Right?
And I freaking love it. Right. Everybody's like, oh, that's not how you do LinkedIn. Right. You need to find people in your field and your network and build. I'm like, that's so boring. I can do that. And that's great. Right. But I want to find crazy, wild people that can teach me new things.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest, LinkedIn has changed my goals because I think my goals would have always been to stay in workforce and stay in this space and just keep going. But it has now allowed me to be like, oh, maybe I need to do a podcast. Maybe I need to start doing journaling with Neela. Maybe I need to, work with Sam more on this collab. It's like so many new things have opened up that I can't answer the question what Megan's going to do in the next couple of years because right now I'm having fun growing and learning in ways that I would have never last year
Right.
said I would wanted to grow and learn. Right.
Right. By the
So
way,
I want to
Neela
keep doing
and
that.
Sam are fucking amazing. Like, holy,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Right. And those are women I wouldn't have been surrounded or been inspired by if I wasn't on LinkedIn. I wouldn't have known them. Right. And so I think that it allows me to be okay with not having really clear goals of what's next, right? And professionally and be okay with just like this is the time to learn and grow and experience new things and then I can figure out what I want to do later. And I'm okay with that. Right? I'm
It
okay with that.
is absolutely crazy the amount, you think about the just the words do or don't. So I could
Mhm.
have, right? This conversation could have either done like do could have happened or don't could have
Mhm.
not right now happened. If it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have obviously heard any of this, and I wouldn't have learned a couple pretty valuable lessons today. And one of those, so I'm very thankful that it did. One of those is what you just said, like, you know what? I think this is a time for learning, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
Yep.
sitting back, listening, learning, absorbing the knowledge, and then, you know, to picking the
And
best.
deciding.
Yeah, picking the
Right.
best.
And Trevor, when you first reached out about the warrior, I was like, am I really like a warrior in any way? You know what I mean? Because I think so
Glasses.
often right, it's the glass. Well, for sure. The red glasses are badass all day, all day, all day. But it's like I think we trick ourselves and we do ourselves a disservice by saying like, you don't, you have to have gone through something. You have to fight really hard for things. Sometimes being a warrior is knowing when to just stop and be present and learn something, right? And to know that because the people that are continuing to push and push and push and push and push don't stop and reflect. They don't see other pathway forwards. They're on one, right? To me, true warriors are able to see lots of paths and strategically figure out which is one's best for them at that time, right?
Hmm,
And right now,
preach. That'll
I'm a
preach.
mother of two tiny children. I've got an amazing husband. I want my time here, right? So
Yeah.
I'm building the path that one day I can forge down, right? If I want. But the most important one is the foundation that is in my home, right? That gets my priority. That's where I need to be a badass. That's where I need to develop relationships and strong ones. The other ones can be built at another time. I'm just, I can travel them another time, but I'm building them
Yeah.
now, if that makes sense.
It makes it 100. I mean, it's so spot on. Like I'm very, very number one, very, very thankful that I've met you on LinkedIn. I
So
second that it is a badass platform. Number two, I'm extremely thankful that and blessed to have had this conversation. Like I have learned so much from you today, and I know that a lot of this message is going to resonate with the audience as well. And I liked how you said, a lot of times we think about like being a warrior as like, oh man, I went through hell, I went through, fire and brimstone and I came out and you know, no, not necessarily. It's not, I mean, there's so
yeah.
many different types of warriors. And so I really thank you for broadcasting that statement, number one, but thank you for breaking it down and explaining it because I mean, you're spot on. And
Yeah.
even for me, it's recognizing that that's 100% true because in my mind's eye, I can always I can relate to the going through pain, whatever. And that's the warrior
Mhm.
spirit. And I need to be reminded that, hey, not necessarily like not, oh, that's not the case all the time. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed.
Yeah, right. All preach, preach, preach. Okay,
Right.
As we go, as you know, as we wrap this up, as we close this out, Megan. So where can so for the audience's sake, where can they find you? How can they connect with you? What social media platforms are you on? What's your avenues of communication?
Right now, it's just LinkedIn. So come
Right
over to
on.
LinkedIn, hang out. Always open to new friends and new people to learn from.
Yeah, and for the audience, I can definitely attest to that. So, please make sure that you are connecting with Megan. Like I promise you. I mean, you'll obviously see it from talking here, but you will not regret it. And Megan, thank you, like from the bottom of my heart, for accepting the invitation for being part of Way of the Warrior. And we're definitely gonna have to do like a round two.
Cool. Thank you.
No,
So
no
fun.
problem. Audience, hey, thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you hit subscribe. And as you know, we'll see you next time and we'll see you out there. Bye.